Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hello, Briony here from Kit Guru, and in this video I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. So Aorus has sent us over 3 monitors to take a look at, and normally with Kit Guru when we do a monitor review we do it on our website in kind of like a written form, because obviously it's quite hard to kind of review a monitor on camera because the kind of colours and things are going to vary no matter what you're recording on and what you're watching on and things. So we tend to do a more technical written review where we do it with all the kind of testing and graphs and all the really interesting kind of detailed information. However, with this monitor that Aorus have sent us, they haven't just sent us 1 monitor, they haven't sent us 2 monitors, they have sent us 3 monitors to create the kind of ultimate triple monitor setup, and they've been sent over to me and I'm extremely happy about that because I'm going to try them out, kind of review them live on camera and also create the ultimate triple monitor kind of racing sim setup. So I am kind of into my car games. I'm not particularly a racing simulator expert or anything like that. I've only actually had a go on a proper wheel and pedals only a couple of times at events and things for sort of 5 or 10 minutes. I tend to just kind of play Forza and sit there with an Xbox controller. I am definitely not a hardcore kind of racing simulator fan. However, I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of create the ultimate setup that I've always dreamed about and try out these monitors at the same time, because I am told they have a few different features and things that make them kind of the specifically made to work together in a multi-monitor setup. So Aorus have sent them over for me to take a look at. They've also sent over RTX 2080 Ti as well to power the triple monitors, so it has the 3 display ports that I'm going to need. I've already inserted that into my PC, so that is all ready to go. I just need to set up the monitors. So I'm going to grab one of the boxes that I've got behind me here and we can take a little bit of a closer look. Ooh. The box that these things come in is absolutely mental. They are 27-inch monitors, so that is quite big. And the box is of course even bigger. When they arrived, I think the courier was not very pleased. I have quite a lot of stairs they have to go up, and every time I get a delivery I always feel so guilty because they're kind of carrying all these boxes up the stairs. They do come with a handle, but they do have quite a bit of weight to them and things. So the monitor in question is a CV27F and it is a Gigabyte Aorus monitor. It retails for around £350–360 here in the UK, so it is definitely up there in price, but it does have a whole host of features that I'm hoping are going to sort of justify that price. Of course I'm going to try it out to the best of my ability and things. I want to see how easy it is to set up, whether it creates a really nice triple monitor setup or whether they are just kind of overpriced and all the features and things you get maybe aren't worth the money. So when it comes to the features on this monitor, it is 1080p resolution, it's a 27-inch monitor, and it also has a 165Hz refresh rate as well. So if you're a gamer, that sounds great. Obviously 1080p you might think to you particularly is kind of slightly lacking resolution. I know a lot of people kind of like to have 1440p or 2K instead. There is also a 2K version of this monitor. They do a CV27Q version, which does actually have that higher resolution. This is the 1080p version, which to me I think is probably more suitable for a triple monitor setup, because even though 2080 Ti is a really powerful graphics card, if you want to make the most of that 165 Hz refresh rate, trying to get it to power 3 high resolution monitors obviously a lot harder than trying to run them at 1080p. So to me 1080p definitely makes slightly more sense for having 3 of the things. It also has a 1 millisecond response time, so once again that's a great feature to find on a gaming monitor. It means that you shouldn't get any kind of like that ghosting or lagging that you can get with some monitors that don't have quite as fast sort of response time, and it also has a few different software features and things as well. The curvature of the monitor the kind of curve that comes with the monitor is 1500R, which I've done a bit of research on this. Most monitors are 1800. 1500 is meant to be closer to the human eye, so it is more of a curvature. The human eye, Aorus claim, is 1000. So 1500 is closer than your typical curved monitor. When I've got all three of them set up, I'm kind of expecting a semicircular effect, so it would definitely look quite cool. But yeah, it's a big monitor. It's got a whole load of different features. It's also HDR as well. It also has FreeSync. It's a certified HDR, but it's certified HDR 400, which is kind of the lowest certification, but it should still provide a increased kind of color and contrast and things over like your more standard monitor. So it's HDR, but it's not kind of like the true HDR, because there is like a 500 and like 1000 rating and things as well. Also with this monitor, I'm just going to grab my notes so I don't forget any of the features and things that it has. Has 90% DCI EP3 kind of color spectrum ratio. That's higher than kind of like the 100% sRGB that you might find on, I've seen it on laptops and things. This is a different color space that's used by kind of the film industry. So it basically means that it has more colors. It can display more colors than you would find on more basic monitors, basically. Obviously, if you were someone that wanted to do like photo editing and video editing, and you wanted to take it really seriously, that's actually getting there, and it's surprising to see such a high amount on kind of a gaming monitor. You also have a contrast ratio of 3000:1, so it is a VA panel. So that of course helps with response time. It also means you get some really good blacks as well. So contrast ratio of 3000:1, really good blacks. So it should be a pretty good looking monitor. It's got like the HDR, it's got like the VA panel, it's got a high refresh rate, it's got 1080p resolution, but being 27 inches not too bad. So I'm expecting big things. Let's take it out of the box and take a closer look at what it actually looks like inside. This is such a big box to handle and kind of maneuver around and things. Being a 27-inch monitor, it should be quite a bit smaller than the box it comes in, but it's always nice to see a monitor come with plenty of packaging, because you really do not want to have it damaged in the mail. It also does have some instructions on the box itself when it comes to taking the monitor out of the box. The idea is to keep it this way up, slide it out, and then kind of assemble the stand onto the back of the monitor while it's still in the foam, which definitely makes sense as it saves me sort of juggling it around. The monitor has been freed from its prison. I will just lift it up so you can kind of see what the packaging looks like. So we have got some accessories sat on top here. There is an instruction manual that tells you how to put the monitor together. I will definitely be taking a look at that just to make sure that I assemble the stand correctly. It should be pretty straightforward, but it does vary slightly for every monitor. I've also got a power adapter here that is a UK one. There is also one for Europe as well. This is kind of the base of the stand. So it's nicely wrapped at the moment, but I will definitely be able to get that off and we can take a look at the stand. It seems to be a very nice kind of rubber and metal stand, so that should be nice and stable. And then we've also got some leads as well. So there's one for a display port, and we've also got the USB port. So that all, it's a USB 3 that connects up to the PC, because this monitor has software, so you don't have to use the on-screen software to kind of control the monitor. You can also control it with software that you have in your desktop, which is quite nice. You don't have to mess around with the buttons or the joystick or whatever that's on the monitor itself. You can do it all from your desktop. And there's also a cable for HDMI as well. I will be using the display ports adapters, but you also get the option if you wanted to use HDMI as well. So in our little packet here, it has got the instructions, so it's going to tell me how to hopefully put the stand together. On the second layer of foam, you can see that we have got the monitor itself, so it's obviously a lot smaller than the box that it comes in, but like I say, that's definitely not a bad thing, because with this monitor, you definitely don't want to get it damaged. It's got a good amount of kind of padding around it. And then you've also got the kind of stand as well. So that's going to be neck bit, I guess, and then we've also got a base. It looks like this is going to be kind of a nice adjustable stand, so I'm definitely a fan of that, because it's always nice to be able to adjust the height and the pivot and stuff of monitors, particularly if you're having a multi-monitor setup as well, because if they are static you can maybe never get the kind of positioning quite right, but having a stand that kind of moves around and things will definitely make it a little bit easier to get them all lined up, so we don't have any kind of weird wonky gameplay. So it seems as though I've done everything correctly so far. I'd say the instructions aren't particularly in depth. They are more kind of pictograms of what to do, but I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get it done. So I need to flip the box around so the monitor's facing the other way. Get most of that bag off so I can get to where the stand's going to fix onto the back of the monitor. It looks like it might also have support for a, I think it's like VESA, or it's VESA mount. So you can kind of use a, I don't know if that's what this plate uses that comes with the monitor. I think it is a slightly different mount, but it will also have support if you wanted to use one of those kind of funky arm things or attach onto the wall like you can with TVs. It looks like it does have the mounting options for that particular kind of thing. You don't have to use a stand that comes with it, but I'm going to hope this stand's quite nice that you would want to use it. So taking a little look at the neck of it, because you can obviously see it a lot better than once it's actually attached to the monitor. It's got like the little Aorus eagle logo on the back there. It's kind of finished in like a silver finish. The actual thing is made of plastic, but it is seemed to be like a plastic shell. So it's got the metal construction underneath, and the plastic shell is, I guess, just kind of a pretty thing. It looks like it has got a hole to thread cables through, so that's always nice to have a little bit of integrated cable management options into the stand. So you've got kind of this bit here, which I'm guessing is probably going to move up and down, and then also probably swing side to side as well, but it's a bit too stiff at the moment without the monitor on it to kind of help me with the weight of things. But yeah, it looks pretty nice, very well constructed. It's a nice kind of stand to come with a monitor, but it is quite an expensive monitor, so I guess it makes sense that it comes with a good stand. That was very easy to install. So it had two little prongs at the top. I slided the prongs in, then gave it a push, and it's now clipped into place. And I can see that this arm definitely moves, kind of pivots. And then I imagine the monitor will also be able to move up and down on it as well, because it has got a slot for that. I'm just going to grab the final little piece, which is the rather spiky base. That looks like a weapon, doesn't it? It's almost like a boomerang or something you could kind of throw. It's like something you'd see in a film, like someone just like pulling it off their backpack or something and just launching it. Monitor stand also doubles as a deadly weapon if you wanted to. So this seems to be pretty standard as what you get with all monitors. You've got that little kind of thumb screw on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this inserted and just do that up. That's very nicely connected up. There's no real play in it at all. The monitor that I currently have now, it's a 40-inch monitor, and the stand for it, I would say, probably isn't particularly suitable for how big the monitor is. Whereas the base on this one, it doesn't have any real play in it at all. It seems to be locked into place pretty well. The only movement it has actually is the movement I think it's supposed to have. Which is kind of the base, like rotate. So you can obviously rotate the monitor, pivot the monitor, and also adjust the height on it as well. So that is going to make life so much easier when we're trying to line up all three of them. The final step now, I'm going to try and lift the monitor up and put it down on the desk without damaging anything or falling over the packaging. And we can see how it looks, kind of all stood up and ready to connect out to my PC. It's like the big reveal, isn't it? Wow. I can see that does seem to have quite a nice matte coating on it actually, because normally, oh there we go, there was the reflection. Normally my lights kind of reflect back onto it. You can see when I go like that it does, but that is pointing it kind of directly at it. It seems to be pretty good. It isn't getting any kind of weird glare or anything onto it, so it should be a nice sort of matte panel. We've also got a reminder of those specifications down the side here. So you kind of see that in shops, don't you, when you're looking around all the monitors they've got on display, they've always got the specifications. So I'll definitely be taking that off. But it seems to be really, really nice. So it can be moved up and down. It can be moved side to side. Get rid of that reflection again. And it can also be pivoted upwards and downwards. That's a rather nice stand. It hasn't got a huge amount of movement, and it isn't one of the stands that you can rotate it so it's portrait, but it is a curved monitor, so you probably wouldn't want to do that anyway, but you know, I have seen stands like that. And it can't go like spin all the way around and stuff, but it does seem to do a pretty good job of kind of staying in place. So that's the first monitor setup. I will probably go ahead and create the next 3 now. I'm just going to plug this one in because I do want to see what it looks like. The overall, it does have RGB lighting on it, so I do definitely want to see what the RGB lighting looks like. The overall chassis around the back here, it is made of kind of a plastic. I will see if I can turn it around. Oh god, it's quite heavy. You know what, I'm not sure I've inserted the stand quite properly there. Needs a little bit more of a click. That's more like it. I think I hadn't quite given it quite enough of a push. So the back is kind of a plastic, kind of a textured plastic. The whole thing is a textured plastic. But it definitely doesn't look bad, and round here is where the RGB will be, so not sure why you would want RGB on the back of the monitor, but maybe in a dark room it could reflect off the wall. If you've got a monitor right up against like a white wall like this in a dark room, you might be able to get some sort of patination and that around the monitor, which will definitely be quite cool. But it's kind of got these Aorus stripes, and it also says team up and fight on. So I guess that's kind of the Aorus slogan for this monitor. I guess it makes sense if I'm going to do like a triple monitor setup, like team up, as in like have 3 of them. But yeah, pretty cool. I do like it. It's quite a lot of plastic. Oh, this is actually a bit different. It's got like a brushed aluminium, but it's not aluminium, it is plastic. It's just made to look like aluminium. That's quite nice. I suppose I should probably also go what connections it has on it. Like I said, I'm not used to doing monitors, so it's kind of just wing it and see how it turns out. But I do quite like it. As monitors go, I'm a fan, but it's a lot of money, so it best look good as well. So underneath we have a power cable. Oh, that's something I should definitely mention. These monitors have inbuilt power bricks. So with some monitors you'll find that you have to have an external power brick like you would with a laptop. These monitors, they just take a single kettle lead. So as you can see, it just comes with a kettle lead, and you just plug that straight into the monitor. So that is one of the features that Aorus mentioned is good for having a multi-monitor setup, because even though you still kind of need the 3 plugs to power the 3 monitors, you also then don't have 3 power bricks to contend with when it comes to cable management. So the area under your desk and things is going to be a little bit more organised, and you're not going to have so many of those power bricks and things kind of hanging around you. You just have the power brick kind of built into the monitor. The kind of downside of that though is that it probably isn't very easily serviceable. If something went wrong with the power brick on an external power brick, you just replace the power brick and the cable and you can still use your monitor. If something goes wrong with kind of the power brick that's built into the monitor itself, it's obviously a lot more difficult to sort of deal with. But when it comes to the other connections, it has 2 HDMI ports, a display port, a port that connects the USB up, and it also has 2 separate USB ports, and it has a jack for a microphone, a jack for a headphone, and it also has a Kensington lock. A good thing to mention with the USB ports on this monitor as well, one of them is like a fast charge USB port, so if you have a phone that supports fast charging, for example I have a Samsung Galaxy S9, or if you have like an iPhone that has fast charging, I'm pretty sure most iPhones have it. I don't know Apple products too well. But yeah, if you have a phone that supports fast charging, you can plug your charger cable for your phone into the monitor and it will fast charge the phone through the monitor, which is quite a cool feature because I think you do get USB ports like that on laptops now, but it's something that you probably wouldn't expect to find on a monitor, and of course it does help to kind of clear up your desk space. Likewise with having a headphone jack and a microphone jack on a monitor as well, it is quite a nice feature to just streamline everything. Also having additional USB ports anyway is quite nice, in case you maybe have a motherboard that has only like 3 or 4 USB ports and you've got like a RGB headset stand, RGB mouse mat, RGB everything, RGB fan, like you want as many USB ports as you can get. So this monitor does have USB 3 ports, which is nice. So connectivity is good. The overall chassis I like. I want to try out the RGB lighting for definite. I think it's finally time to plug it in and have a quick look at what it looks like, and then I can sort of get the other monitors set up. I must say the curve probably isn't as harsh as I expected either. When I looked, I said 1800 is like normal, 1500 is quite a lot more curved. It's not that crazy curved. There's one from Asus, wasn't there, that we saw at CES that looked too curved. I don't know whether that was the same curvature, or just maybe was a bigger monitor, but it had like really bad kind of in the corner, I don't know what you call it, like it had like that fisheye effect, and I didn't really like it at all. So I'm hoping that's going to be avoided with this monitor because it's a little bit smaller. But yeah, it's finally time to plug it in. I kind of remembered slightly too late that it does actually have a hole for cables. I threaded the USB one through it. The others are just sort of kind of hanging out. Gosh, my PC is going to look so mental with 3 monitors, because that's 3 power cables, 3 display cables, 3... Do they all need to be connected up by USB to the PC? Surely not. They must do. They must have to be. I'm going to run out of USB ports. Maybe I'll have to connect them into each other. That's probably a good plan, isn't it? I'll just use the USB ports on the monitors, because it's just going to use up so many USB ports if all 3 of them need to be plugged in. I think that's only so you can use the software, but yeah, it's a lot of cables anyway. So that's it plugged in. I should probably turn it on. Where is the power switch? Oh! It's doing something. Da 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 da. Wow. My PC is set up for 4K resolution, so that looks absolutely terrible. Let me fix it. So that's the resolution problem now solved on the monitor. So it's running at 1080p now rather than 4K. Normally my PC is set to 4K. Obviously that does not look very good on a 1080p monitor. I've tried to open up the RGB Fusion 2 software, which controls all the kind of Aorus RGB lighting. Unfortunately though, it seems to be taking its time slightly. I did want to sort of try it out and see what kind of effects and stuff I could get, but I think I'm going to have to wait for that one. Maybe because I've got so much stuff plugged in. I've got a Aorus graphics card, keyboard, mouse, and now monitor. It's kind of trying to figure out what to do. It doesn't particularly know what's happening, and it's sort of crashed, but I will definitely try and sort that out. But the monitor itself, it does look very good. The colours and things look nice and bright, so I'm definitely excited to get playing some games and stuff on it and actually get some proper testing done. But before we do that, I'm definitely going to set up the other 2 monitors, because this is a triple monitor setup video and there's no point just doing it with one when I have 2 more in the boxes behind me here. So I definitely want to get those set up and kind of experience the full show that I can get from these. The RGB lighting on the back is currently kind of set to orange. I must say it does look pretty good though. You're obviously not going to see it, but I guess you know it's there. It's kind of the same thing with like an RGB headset. It's like the same concept. You never see it yourself, but you know it's there, so whatever. I mean, it's an RGB monitor. It does seem to be pretty nice at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and get those other 2 set up, and hopefully by the time I'm finished setting those up, the RGB Fusion software will decide that it wants to work. I now have all three of the monitors organised into a triple display setup, and I must say they do look really nice. The curvature isn't quite as extreme as what I was expecting. They do have that 1500R kind of curvature, which is slightly more than a standard curved monitor, but they don't create such a sort of extreme semicircle shape like I was expecting. They do create kind of a nice sloping curve across the desk I have here. I must say if my desk was any smaller though, it probably wouldn't fit. These monitors only just do fit on there, so I have had to put my PC on the floor, but the stands themselves are quite nice because of the way they're made. They can be used at a right angle, which means that you can fit them on a desk much more easily than you can with some stands. They might have kind of a curved shape or just kind of a straight shape. They do a really good job at supporting the monitors, but it also means that you can fit all three of them on a desk that might not normally take a triple display setup. So with these monitors, I have played around with the settings and things. I have sort of tried them out already because setting up triple monitors does definitely take quite a bit of effort. It's not just a case of all plugging them in and they're going to work straight away. You have to sort of set up NVIDIA Surround, also set up all the settings and things, because kind of some of the features on the monitor aren't set by default like you would expect. So for example, the 1 millisecond response time isn't set by default because it's a VA panel. They do have to overdrive it in order to achieve the 1 millisecond. So by default it's set to quality. You do have to set it to speed in order to get that. I also had to kind of enable the G-Sync. So these monitors are FreeSync compatible, but they should also be part of the G-Sync compatible scheme. I'm told there is a very similar panel that's just gone through. Another Aorus monitor has just been kind of I guess it's qualified basically to be G-Sync compatible. These ones at the moment aren't actually have been announced yet, but I think they're pretty much expecting them to go through. So you can enable it, but at the moment it does give you a little bit of a warning, but I expect in the near future it will probably be announced that these are also G-Sync compatible. So I've enabled that. I've also enabled NVIDIA Surround, which means that triple monitors are going to work when it comes to gameplay. That NVIDIA Surround is known to be a little bit dodgy. I have had a few issues with it, but I don't think it is as buggy as it used to be. But it's something to bear in mind when you are going to be looking at getting a triple monitor set up. Is a little bit more kind of hassle involved rather than just getting a kind of single wider large screen display. But I've got the software here ready. I want to show you a few of the features and things that I think are pretty cool. Before I do that though, I'm going to peel off the three kind of stickers that are on the display because I want to be able to line them up properly using the integrated OSD kind of grid software they have. So I'm going to peel these off and then I can make sure they're all perfectly aligned. It was very, very satisfying to peel off all of those off. One of the best things of getting new products is kind of peeling off all the little stickers and things. So on this middle monitor here, you can see that I have got the OSD kind of software open. They call it the NVIDIA OSD Sidekick software. And it basically means that rather than having to use the joystick on the monitor itself, you can use the software to control the monitors. And they are all kind of connected up to each other with that USB cable. So as far as I know, they should all kind of be controlled by this together, but I have found that a few of the settings don't control all of the monitors and you do have to do it with the joystick individually. Hopefully Aorus will kind of improve that. One of the problems with their products that I find is that often the hardware is actually really good, but sometimes their products are let down slightly by the software. So hopefully they'll update that in the near future, that when you change a setting on the software, it changes for all of the monitors and you don't have to sort of go into the joystick menu individually. So the one that I've got up on this middle display is kind of a grid, which is designed to help you line up if you're going to be using multiple monitors. So the way to turn that on, you can't do it using the software. For some reason, it's not in any of the settings on there. You have to do it on the monitor itself. So press the joystick button at the bottom and then you go across to the right and there is kind of like a little game assist option, and then you go down and it's in display alignment. And select that and the little grid thing appears. I'll also do it on this end display as well. So you can see these kind of little orange bars have appeared, and the idea of that is that they are going to it's going to make it easier to line the monitors up so that you're not going to have any kind of wonky gameplay basically. And because the way the stands work, it's not too bad to do, because they do kind of tilt, they do pivot, they do, you can lift them up and down, you can rotate them and things. The one thing with these monitors though, which is one of the sad things with monitor setups, even though they are like bezel-less monitors, so they don't have a bezel to them, you still do get a black border, because it's just the way that the display works. You're still gonna have, it's almost as if you still have a bezel, it's just a digital bezel. So even though they are bezel-less monitors, so you can get them really close together, you are still going to have that kind of black border around the picture, which is slightly unfortunate. But I must say, when you are gaming, you probably don't actually notice it that much, particularly with car games as well, which is what I'm going to be testing these monitors with. Like simulator games, normally that's where the columns are in the car, so it's not where you're looking. You're kind of looking at what's in front of you there, and these two monitors are sort of in your peripheral vision anyway. So it's not normally too much of a problem. So the software itself, now those monitors are all nicely lined up, I'm going to sort of take off the on-screen display. It's quite easy to remove actually, you just kind of press the button and this middle button, and then it takes them off. And then I'm hoping that will vanish, yeah, without me telling it to vanish. Okay, so the software is now open on the screen, so you can do all of it with the joystick underneath the monitors and change all the settings, but it is much easier to do it with the software. I'm just going to start OBS recording. I have had a few issues with this, so I hope it's going to work. One of the things with NVIDIA Surround is that you can't use Shadow Play, which is what I normally use to screen record. Shadow Play doesn't seem to like NVIDIA Surround. OBS kind of likes it, but also I've had a few issues. I've been testing it and it's taken me quite a while to get it to work, because the screen keeps going black and then the recording also keeps lagging as well. So I'm hoping I can do as best I can to actually get you a screen recording of the software. But yeah, I'll set that recording and then we can take a look at the different features. Right, so on this first tab here, we have the kind of display settings. So on the left, it's got different options. So I'm currently on the standard kind of color profile. There's also an Aorus FPS, RTS movie reader, and an sRGB profile. To me, the standard looks the best. Some of the other profiles make the monitor look a little bit kind of washed out and things. You can also create your own kind of profile. So if you open a program, if you're going to open something like Photoshop, or if you open a game, you can link it up so the monitor automatically switches to that profile, which is quite a cool feature because it's something you might not normally be able to do with a monitor because it doesn't have software that works with the desktop PC itself. It's all kind of done on the monitor. So because the monitor can talk to the PC, you can sort of set that up. We've also got the options for brightness, contrast, sharpness, black equalizer, color vibrance, low blue light settings, super resolution settings, gamma, color temperature, and also overdrive. Overdrive is the important one because that is where you're going to set kind of the response time. So personally, I want it to be as fast as possible, and it does make a noticeable difference. If you change it to quality and then kind of wave this around, you do get a little bit of kind of motion blur, whereas if you change it to speed, it does make everything a lot crisper. So I've kind of kept it on the speed setting, but that isn't set by default. That is something you do have to change yourself. You've got aim stabilizer, which is kind of, to me, I had a little go on this at CES and it was kind of a little bit of a hack in a way. The way it works is that it kind of reduces motion blur when you're shooting or something, so it makes it easier to aim. It does definitely make a difference. It's pretty cool, and it's a feature on this monitor that does help to justify the price slightly. You've also got where you can enable FreeSync, and you've also got where you can enable an on-screen crosshair as well. So if you're a fan of kind of like Call of Duty or CSGO, any game where you don't have like an on-screen crosshair that stays in place. I think CSGO is probably the main one because you can take off the one they have in game and you can kind of add your own in. You can do it on the monitor, so you don't have to have extra software. You can do it on the monitor itself. I don't know whether games like Fortnite or something, I don't know. I don't play a huge range of FPS games. But you can add a crosshair, so if your game has like anti-cheating software or anything, you can kind of get around that, and it is on the on-screen display itself. You've also got options for kind of picture in picture, which obviously I've got a triple monitor set up, so that's all kind of disabled at the moment. And then you've also got the options to display kind of the dashboard, and the dashboard is what will give you kind of information about the PC, so your CPU load, your GPU load, kind of memory usage and things like that, and that's all done on the on-screen display, which is quite cool in this monitor because a lot of software that you would use to have a look in games, some games will see that as kind of cheating software and it won't open up in game, but with this monitor it's done on the on-screen display, so it's done within the monitor and it's nothing to do with your kind of windows, and therefore it will still show up in game. So that is definitely a cool feature. You have options to add the refresh rate, and you can also add gaming timers as well. So if you like to play WoW, I know there's a lot of software that has gaming timers for like World of Warcraft anyway, but if you wanted it for a game that maybe doesn't have the functionality to add a countdown timer, you do have that coming from this monitor, which is all done on the monitor so it doesn't affect the actual game. You've also got options to change the hotkeys, so you can actually do stuff on your keyboard and it will change the settings on the monitor, which is once again one of the advantages of having actual software. And then you've got options to kind of change the import. You can just change the transparency of the kind of on-screen display settings. You can have an LED indicator, and you can also have an RGB controller settings as well, so that will open the RGB Fusion 2 software, which also works with Aorus peripherals and the Aorus graphics cards and stuff like that as well. You've got quick switch, so if you flick the joystick up, down, left, right, you can change what it does, so you've got like different hotkeys. And you've also got active noise cancelling, so this is quite a cool feature on this monitor, and it does actually work as well. This is another thing that I saw at CES, and this isn't the same monitor that they show, but it is the same technology. So if you plug a headset into the monitor using the microphone or the audio jack, they have a thing that kind of takes out the background noise. So the monitor has microphones in it, and it can read what the background noise is. If you're in a kind of at a LAN event or something, it's probably where it makes the most sense, where there's loads of noise and talking going on around you, and it can kind of take that noise out of your kind of microphone audio, and it does it in some sort of smart way, and it does kind of make the microphone sound a little bit odd, but for me it's one of the most effective noise cancelling things I've actually heard, because you can get headphones with like noise cancelling inbuilt in them, but it often doesn't work very well. Whereas having the active noise cancelling on the monitor, with it having like its own separate microphones or whatever, actually seems to work really well. So I was impressed with that when I tried that out on a sort of different monitor. You've also got an About tab as well, which is meant to provide firmware updates and kind of updates for the software. I can't get this tab to doing anything. I've tried clicking on download and live update and stuff. It doesn't seem to do anything. I think that probably means there isn't an update for it. I have had a look online to make sure I've got the latest one, and I do. But once again, kind of Aorus weird software. It doesn't really want to do that. So one of the things I notice is that with the overdrive tab, if I change it to speed, it does only affect one monitor. You do have to change that manually on all the monitors. I would kind of expect it using the software to change all of them. So that's something I would like them to change. Also, HDR, of course, these are HDR monitors, so you do have to enable that within Windows. I've currently got it enabled. When you do have it enabled, it does take away some of the settings. I don't think I can show you because it is kind of on the on-screen display, these settings that get removed, and the OBS software won't record that. But I can read them out to you. So with HDR enabled, you lose the aim stabilizer option and the black equalizer option in the settings. And I think you also lose the picture display options, but you can change the picture display on this piece of software. So it's slightly odd that it doesn't have it on the controller, but you can change it within the software with the HDR enabled. So it tells you that HDR is on, and you have to go into Windows settings and do it for each of the monitors individually, but then when I did NVIDIA Surround, it did them kind of all at once. But yeah, it's a slight pain to set up triple monitors. In general though, with these monitors, I must say £359, that does make them quite expensive because they are 1080p monitors, and for me one of the first things I noticed when I took a look at these monitors is, oh my god, I can see pixels because I'm so used to using 4K that it's definitely kind of spoiled my eyes slightly. And with a 1080p monitor, especially a 27-inch one, you can see the individual pixels. If you are used to using 1080p, you won't have a problem, but if you are used to a higher resolution, you're probably going to notice it with these monitors. Just because they are quite big. 1080p on like a 15-inch laptop monitor, you don't really notice it, but 27 inches you can definitely see it. And a monitor at that price tag, you can get kind of a 1440p or like 2K, depending on what you call it. You can get curved monitors with a VA panel at that price tag with a higher resolution than these. So they do have a nice kind of refresh rate though, so they have the low response time because of the overdrive, and they also have a native 165Hz refresh rate, which is definitely good. But I think the price tag can be justified in the fact that they do have a lot of really good features with obviously this software, and you've got kind of all the gaming features and things. But if you are purely looking for bang for buck, then these monitors probably aren't for you. But if you're someone that likes kind of the high quality of they've got really nice stands, they've got pretty good software. I think the software could definitely be improved, but they have got a lot of different features that I think helps to justify the price tag. Then these monitors are probably going to be good for you. But as a triple monitor setup, they definitely work. The only two features they kind of, well, first they have three features, is that they have an inbuilt power brick so that you have less cables to deal with. You have got the on-screen grid, which makes them really good for kind of setting them up against each other. And you also do have the fact you can kind of daisy chain them in because they've got USB ports. So that makes them good for a triple monitor setup. But yeah, I do definitely like them, and I think they do provide a nice experience. It's just they are kind of expensive, but then they do justify it with some of the features. It just depends on what you want really. But taking a look at them without the price tag, I would say they are a very, very good monitor, and I'm very pleased with kind of the options and the different features and things they have. Definitely high end and something I really like. So the next step of this video is that I'm going to set up my new Thrustmaster wheel. I've been sent a wheel from Thrustmaster. I've never taken a look at a proper simulator wheel before, so I'm definitely quite excited for that. And I'm basically going to create kind of my ultimate racing sim setup, and then I'm going to have a go at playing some games on these monitors properly, and checking out what they sort of look like when I'm whizzing around in a car with a wheel and proper pedals. And welcome back to part 2 of kind of my ultimate racing simulator setup and review video. So in this part of the video I'm going to be taking a look at a racing wheel. I'm not going to pretend that I'm any sort of like racing sim expert or anything, and this is my first proper experience with a high-end racing wheel. I have had a go on racing simulators and things at events and stuff. I've had a go on kind of a lower end Logitech wheel, but nowhere near anything of this standard. The one advantage I've got though is that I have driven a car before. I passed my test a few years ago. I've driven 4 or 5 different cars since then. So yeah, that's basically what I'm going to be comparing the wheel to, and also seeing if it enhances my kind of gaming, driving game experience. So I'm used to playing kind of like Forza. I've also specifically downloaded the new Formula 1 2019 game to try out with this wheel, because the wheel itself, the TSPC Racer, is kind of more of a Formula 1 style wheel. So I thought it'd make quite a cool game to kind of test the wheel out on, try it in a couple of different games and see if it behaves differently and things. So I'm very excited to get into this. I'll start off with kind of the pricing. So the TSPC Racer wheel is very expensive. To me it seems like a lot of money. It's £500 just for the wheel. It's part of kind of the Thrustmaster ecosystem, so you have to buy the wheel and the pedals and the shifter if you wanted a shifter separately. So the wheel, £500. The pedals I'm going to be using are the T3 PA Pro pedals. They're down on the floor at the moment because I haven't got very much space. This video is going to be a little bit awkward to film because there's some big boxes and big products and I need to try and get them set up. The pedals retail for around £130, so the whole set together is going to be like £630. To me, I'm pretty sure you can get an actual car for that amount of money, and then when you team it up with the kind of the triple monitor display that I've got going on as as well, the Aorus monitors that I set up in the first half of the video, you're looking at a pretty decent car actually, and team up with the PC that you need to run the whole thing. Yeah, you could get like a pretty nice car for that. But it wouldn't be a Ferrari, it wouldn't be a Lamborghini, it wouldn't be an Aston Martin. So with this kind of racing simulator setup, it gives you kind of the experience of driving those sort of cars. So I'm going to go ahead and get this box open. We can take a look at what comes with the racing wheel. It is a very, very big box, so I've put it down on the floor, but I'm going to kind of pull stuff out of it and show it up on camera as I do it. So we've got a user manual. This is a really, really big user manual, so that's hopefully going to tell me how to set it all up and get it attached up to my desk safely, because I think this thing's going to be pretty crazy and pretty powerful, so I'm expecting quite an interesting experience, and hopefully we'll see how easy it is to set up. Obviously I'm kind of like a first time noob at this sort of thing, so it's quite a good way of just seeing it from someone's perspective that hasn't done something like it before. So that manual, the reason it's so big it looks like is it's got loads of different languages in it. We have got this part here which looks like a clamp to attach onto the bottom of the desk. So it's made of plastic and it's got some kind of little rubber pads on it. There is also a USB connector, so that looks like that's what connects the wheel up to my PC. We've got kind of a tool here, kind of a threaded tool that I'm guessing is also going to be part of the kind of clamping mechanism. I've got my UK kettle lead, so this is what's going to power the entire thing. It does have a kind of separate power supply, obviously to power the wheel, and what I've looked up is in the specifications it's 400 watts, so that's going to be pretty crazy. I'm kind of expecting it to rip my arms out actually. This is probably the most exciting thing I've taken out so far. So we've got the actual wheel. So the wheel does come separately from the actual base of the steering mechanism. So these wheels I think you can replace. This is the wheel that comes with the TSPC sort of set as standard, and it does definitely to me look like a Formula 1 racing style wheel. Obviously it's not your typical steering wheel you'd find in a car. It's made of kind of like a brushed aluminium. It feels really nice. It's got a really good weight to it. It's got this kind of like Alcantara or suede finish on the handles. It feels really nice to hold. I quite like the overall design, but I'm not too keen on kind of these brightly coloured buttons. To me that does make it look a little bit on the cheap side, I guess. This is a very expensive set, and I guess maybe Formula 1 wheels look like that. I don't particularly know, to be honest. I know they've got a whole load of different buttons and settings and things on the wheel, but these will be obviously that you can program to different options in various games, but maybe if they kind of tone down the colours a bit would maybe make it a little bit nicer looking, but it feels like a very well constructed wheel. On the back you've got how you attach it into the base, and it's also got these two kind of aluminium paddles as well that actually feel pretty similar to what you'd find on a car, so I'm definitely excited to try this out. Digging deeper into the box, I have found the kind of power adapter. So this they've actually done in a really cool style. If I take it out of the bag, you can see that it's kind of in the shape of a turbo. So I guess they've sort of thought about that. It's a racing wheel, so they've done a kind of design that reminds you of cars rather than just having a standard square one. So it says Thrustmaster turbo power on it, and it is the 400 watt power adapter, and that's got a connection on it to connect up to the actual base of the wheel, and then you've also got on the other side is where the kettle lead's going to go in. So that has got quite a bit of weight to it, but it's quite nice. I do quite like the design of that. And here we have the base itself. I'm going to rip it out of the plastic packaging so I can take a little bit of a closer look at the construction, but it is quite a weighty thing. Here we go, here she is. So on the front there is where obviously my steering wheel is going to attach. It's got a couple of buttons down here. One of them says mode and one of them's got like a little LED indicator. There's also a button that says 11 and 12, so I'm guessing that's more buttons that you can program depending on what kind of game you're playing. You've got kind of the TSPC Racer logo down the bottom, and the whole thing is constructed of metal, which feels really, really nice. It's a really nice kind of construction. I particularly like this kind of titanium colour on on the top there. It really adds to the overall design. It's got this really kind of cool aggressive vents down the side, and it's also got some really big vents on the side there with the kind of the Thrustmaster name. I really like the kind of rivets they've used. It's a really nice overall design. This will definitely look right at home in like a proper racing simulator setup. If you've got kind of the whole the chair and the base and everything to attach this to, I can imagine it would look really, really smart. I guess in a way the wheel sort of lets it down a little bit with those bright colours and things, because this is a really nice designed piece of metal really. On the back it looks like it has the connector, so you've got the connector for the pedals and you've also got a connector for a shifter. I haven't got a shifter to use with my wheel, but I'm just going to use the paddles that you'll find on the wheel, which is if you're driving kind of a Ferrari or a Formula 1 car and stuff anyway, I imagine it's all done on the wheel anyway. So you've got also, there's like a fan around the back here for the cooling. So definitely see what the noise levels are like on this, whether it's kind of a quiet machine to use or whether it does create quite a bit of noise. There's also a connector on there for the USB and also where you plug in the power adapter as well. So I'm very excited to get this all set up. I'm going to go ahead and get it set up, and then we can talk about how I found setting up and whether it was sort of easy to do. I think it might take me a little bit of time. I've also got to read the manual and things, but I'm very excited to see what the sort of finished result is going to look like. So the kind of first half of installing the racer wheel is now finished. So I've clamped it onto my desk and I've also attached the wheel securely onto the base itself. So that wasn't too bad at all. The only sort of issue I had is that the desk I'm using unfortunately is a slightly weird shape, and it kind of has the strut underneath that gets in the way of the clamping mechanism. But I managed to get it as close to the centre of the monitors as I could, but still managed to attach it safely onto the desk, because I definitely do not want it flying off while I'm trying to use it. So it isn't too off in position wise. I'm just going to maybe pretend that I'm driving the car on the right hand side, and then maybe I guess it'll make slightly more sense. But yeah, so that's the first half. The next step is that in the instructions it tells me to download some Thrustmaster software. So I'm just going to go and do that now. Fortunately, I kind of have the website already open on here, so I should be able to find it pretty easily. I'm going to download that, and then it says to follow the instructions on that in order to kind of plug in and set up the USB and power part of connecting up the racing wheel. I've now got the firmware and the software download for the wheel, and I've also gone ahead and plugged it in. That just scared me. It does that when it's kind of calibrating. So I've gone ahead and plugged the wheel in. So I connected up the USB connector, and I've also plugged in the kind of like turbo power supply as well. One thing I must say though is that Thrustmaster haven't been very sort of generous with the cable lengths. The USB cable seemed to be a decent length, but the cable from the actual wheel to where you're going to plug it into the mains power supply is really quite short. The cable from the turbo up to the base doesn't really reach down to the floor for me. My desk isn't that high off the floor, and just trailing it straight down to the floor, it doesn't really reach. So if you wanted to trail it back across the desk and things, it doesn't really seem to work quite well for that. And also the kettle lead that comes with it seems to be quite short as well. So I've had to pull my power adapter really close to my desk, so down on the floor it is an absolute mess of cables. But it is now connected up. The firmware is currently updating, so I'm going to go ahead and unbox the pedals. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we can definitely take a look at what you get with the T3 Pro Racer pedals that go with the steering wheel. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and unbox them on the floor. So these pedals do come in a rather big box, just like the wheel did, and I'm going to sort of slide them out on the floor just so I can get a handle on them. I'm kind of expecting them to come as one unit. I don't imagine there's too much assembly required, but I do know that they are pretty much fully adjustable as well. So these are kind of like the top end pedals that Thrustmaster do. They've got a whole load of different options. You can adjust which kind of orientation you want them to go in, so you can have them them in like the F1 setting where they're on the floor, or you can also have them in like the GT setting where they're suspended as well. So that is really quite cool. That's definitely going to make them feel a lot more like an actual car. They are a 3-pedal set, so you have got a accelerator, brake and a clutch. I am not going to use the clutch because I'm going to be using the paddles, but if you want to have a kind of shifter setup, a manual setup, then you would obviously make use of the clutch. But they are kind of like, as far as I know, the kind of flagship pedals that Thrustmaster do that are compatible with this particular wheel. So I'm expecting good things from them. I'm trying to lift them up so I can show you them on camera, but they are so heavy. So they come in this cardboard box. They are completely made out of metal. So they just look exactly what you'd find in an actual car. They are really quite impressive. They've got this really lovely metal design. You can tell they are an extremely premium pedal set, and I'm expecting these to stay very planted on the floor because they have got so much weight to them. I'm really sort of struggling to hold them up, so I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the packaging off. So when you've got them out of the box, they've got this kind of bit that sticks up the top here. It's got Thrustmaster written on it. And this kind of separate mount is what you would use if you were going to mount them for the kind of GT orientation. It looks like by default they come set up as sort of the F1 pedals. I'll definitely give that a try out first. I personally probably am just going to use this in this orientation because I do want to get playing as quickly as possible. I'm definitely very excited to try these out, and to me I think they're going to feel pretty awesome either way. The pedals that I've used before were kind of like basic plastic ones, except kind of when I was at an event and you had like 5 minutes to have a quick go, but I'm expecting for them to feel amazing. Also in the box as well, they do come with a few accessories, so I'm not entirely sure what these are, but as far as I know, I think it will be different mounting options to mount the pedals in a different orientation. And there's also a couple of mods for the brake pedal as well. So there is a spring mod, and there is also kind of a rubber conical mod, they call it, which basically changes how the brake feels. So it's supposed to make it feel more realistic, as if you're actually braking in a real car. Okay, so the manual that actually comes with them is the most basic thing I've ever seen. It's literally just a sheet of paper that tells you to go to the Thrustmaster website, and it doesn't give you any more information. It just gives you, this is what it's like to set it up in the F1, and this is what it looks like when you set it up as GT, and that's all you get. And it says that in several different languages, and it also tells you like the recycling information. So that's not very detailed at all. It's slightly disappointing. The racing wheel manual was definitely much more in depth. So I'm going to go ahead and get these plugged in, and then I'm going to open up the kind of racing wheel software and take a look at what kind of options and things it has. I've got the Thrustmaster software open on my display, and I've also managed to find the manual for the pedals as well. So with the Thrustmaster software, it seems to give you a few different options. So you've got kind of the buttons. You can also check for an update. It kind of shows you what the wheel is doing. So the axis kind of moves when you actually rotate the wheel, which is pretty cool. So when you're kind of turning the wheel, it tells you what percentage the wheel is turned. You can also adjust the rotation angle. So I've currently got it set to 900, but which is the default option, by the way. And then the actual full rotation of the wheel goes all the way up to 1080. You can also test kind of the feedback of the wheel. This is pretty cool. I did have a little play around. So by pressing the different buttons, it kind of lets you feel the feedback force that comes from the wheel. So as you can see, it is definitely pretty strong. And also I have noticed as well, when you start doing things with it, the little fan does turn on, but I wouldn't say it's too intrusive. It does definitely make a noise, but it's kind of the same noise you get from a quiet laptop while it's kind of like idle. You can hear that there's a fan, but when I've got my headset and stuff on and I'm in the middle of the game, it's definitely not going to annoy me. It's just, it is definitely there. It's not a completely silent device. So yeah, pressing different buttons, you can definitely experience kind of different feedback from the wheel. And I must say, it's really strong. I don't have it on the highest setting. I've got it on the default setting, which is 75%. I'm not going to turn it up any higher because I definitely do not want it to rip my arms out. But it's also nice to know that that is adjustable as well. So if I am finding the wheel a little bit too strong and it's starting to hurt or anything, it seems that you can turn that down. So that's definitely pretty cool. But I am very impressed. The entire thing is attached onto the desk really well. It actually seems to kind of move my desk around. when it's chucking you about. It is a very, very strong wheel. I've also got the pedals and stuff plugged in. They seem to feel pretty good. However, it does seem that there is a little bit more setup to do with the pedals. Just by default, there is a couple of these kind of bars here. I need to screw them into the pedal in order to kind of use them, because at the moment the little rear bit is just kind of sat there. So I'm going to attach those on, and then I'm going to open up Forza and see if I can have a go. Unfortunately, I cannot get OBS to record gameplay though. It does not like the triple monitor setup at all, so I'm gonna have to kind of show you the gameplay with my camera, which is slightly disappointing, I guess, but we can kind of have an experience. I can try out the wheel for the first time, I can have a great time, and then I can sort of tell you how everything feels and how the steering wheel and the pedals kind of relate to driving a real car. But before I do any of that, I just need to finish setting up the pedals. The pedals are all now finally set up, and before I actually open up a game and get trying out this wheel, I just want to say I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of customization there is with these pedals. I know they kind of are the flagship pedals, but it seems you can change pretty much everything on them. You have got options to kind of change the actual position of the pedals, you can adjust the spacing of the pedals, you can adjust the tilt of the pedals, you can adjust the amount of force for the brake pedals, and also of course there is the spring mod and kind of the conical mod as well. You've got like the strong travel and strong resistance, or short travel and weak resistance. You can add the brake mod, you can add the conical mod, you can also adjust how kind of the strength of those two different mods, and of course you can invert the pedals in the two different styles as well, and you can also replace the pedals. So if you want to use a set of pedals from an actual car, they are kind of compatible with that as well, so that is really, really quite cool. You can kind of almost set up your own personal cockpit for whatever car you're going to be driving, which is just awesome. Like, you don't even have that much customization in an actual car, but to have that in kind of a set of pedals to use with the PC is really, really cool. So yeah, and then also when you change the orientation of the pedals, that's what the mode button is on the steering wheel. Is that, so for me it's currently lit up red, which means they're in the F1 style. So that's what I've got the pedals in on the floor. And if you set them up to suspend them, you kind of flip the pedals around, so it tells the steering wheel that the pedals are flipped around. But yeah, there is a whole load of different customization options. The manual itself is also pretty in depth as well. It has a lot of really nice kind of pictograms and that to explain for you how to set up the different pedals. So I'm definitely very impressed. Obviously this is kind of like the first proper racing wheel and pedal set that I've ever taken a look at. I'm not going to pretend that I'm some sort of expert, but it is a lot of money, but it seems that you do get quite a bit for your money as well. So I'm now finally going to open up Forza as my first game to try out, and I cannot tell you how excited I am. Okay, I've got Forza open. It seems to be working pretty well on the 3 displays with the kind of NVIDIA surround enabled, and I'm getting about 80 FPS, so it's obviously not making taking full advantage of the 165 Hz refresh rate on the monitor. So it just shows that even with the 1080 Ti you can't kind of whack all the settings up to ultra and kind of expect the best experience straight away, because I mean, triple monitors definitely takes a hell of a lot of doing, particularly on quite a demanding game as well. So I've currently selected a Bath to drive. I've actually driven one of these in real life, not the 695 but the 595. So I'm going to kind of compare it and see how it feels. Obviously the steering wheel I'm using is quite a bit different to what you have in the actual car, but I guess it's going to give me the best idea possible. I'm really sorry I cannot get it to screen record. I can't get the kind of in-game audio to record as well, so it's probably not going to give you kind of the best experience, but you can just kind of see me using the car and get my sort of first impressions of using the wheel. The controls on the wheel kind of seem to work. The one thing I've noticed though is that the numbers in game are different to the numbers on the wheel, but if you kind of think of the wheel as an Xbox controller, it's kind of intuitive to use with the controls that I kind of already know from using Xbox controller, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and get in this car. Right, here goes nothing. So the kind of triple displays on Forza, so I've got my kind of like main HUD and that in the middle, and these monitors, I must say, do look great. I've got Ultra enabled, I've got HDR enabled. I'm going to go ahead and press the accelerator and hope the car moves. Oh gosh, it does. Oh my goodness. This is possibly the best thing ever. This is so cool. The wheel feels amazing as well, and the brake is very, very responsive. It is literally like driving an actual car. This car is probably one of the slower ones in the game. I haven't really added any kind of modifications to it or anything. So it's going to be quite a bit easier to drive than something like my Ferrari or the Aston Martin, but I'll kind of get used to it. It's actually really easy to pick up. This is actually so much easier than using a controller because it just comes natural, because it's just like driving a real car. And having the kind of display set up like this as well, it is just an awesome experience. I'm driving on the wrong side of the road as well. This is Forza Horizon is set in Scotland, like around Edinburgh, so I'm definitely driving the wrong side by being on the right. Oh, it feels so awesome. I can see myself, unfortunately I can't actually keep any of this, it's just been sent to me for review, but I could see myself spending so many hours on this game, just like playing it. The one thing I must say is the accelerator pedal does feel kind of loose. It hasn't really got much feedback to it, but I suppose maybe that makes sense. The brake, however, even though I haven't added any of the mods to it or anything, just by default it feels really, really good, and it feels like pressing an actual brake pedal, if that makes sense. It has like a nice sort of firmness to it, and even though I have got the pedals set up in the F1 mode, it doesn't feel unnatural to me. You can of course change them so they're in the GT mode, but yeah, this car is awesome. It does, in a way, feel like driving an actual car. I think that's the top speed of this car. 180 it's got to be, isn't it? But it's so much easier than using a controller because it's just so natural. It's just so natural. I find it so much easier to drive. I reckon my lap times would be, and my racing kind of talent is going to be so much better with this than using a controller. I've just jumped in a Lamborghini Aventador. So this is going to be a hell of a lot quicker than my little Abarth. So we'll give it a go and see what happens. Oh yeah, I'm touching the accelerator pedal and it wants to go. Off we go. Let's see how this handles. Oh yeah, that's so much quicker. Definitely need to use a little bit more brake with this one. But it is so much easier than using a controller. So much easier. And it just feels amazing. Oh, there we go. There's my first accident. Oh dear. I must say the controller isn't quite as I don't know, violent as I expected it to be when you crash. I was expecting it to kind of spin out and whiz around and kind of rip my arms out and things, but it isn't that violent. I don't know whether that's a Forza thing. I'll definitely open up the F1 2019 game and give it a go. But it doesn't, it isn't pulling and vibrating as much as I thought it would do. But I suppose in a car you don't really get that anyway. So I've gone ahead and enabled the kind of manual gear change in the menu, and I've jumped in an Aston Martin as well. I reckon this one will be a little bit easier to handle than my Lamborghini. So I'm going to go ahead and have a go and see how these pedals feel in comparison. I've obviously never driven an Aston Martin, but I'm going to have a go. It feels very nice actually. The pedals on the wheel are really, really quite good. I'm not paying too much attention to my gear changes. I'm not used to playing manual, so I'm probably not going to be very good at it. And also I've got like the on-game music, so I can't really hear the engine of the car as such to when I need to change gear and things. Oh, I'm not going to make it. I am going to make it. I'm trying to do a speed run. Oh yeah, you definitely get a lot of feedback when you start sliding around. That is awesome. This feels great. I've got no other proper racing wheels to kind of compare it to, but it just feels so good. I must say I am a fan. I'm definitely a fan. I really wish I could keep this because it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So the wheel feels really nice to hold. It feels very, very solid. It's got the Alcantara on the grips, which feels really nice. It's a nice soft kind of material. The buttons feel very good to press as well. They're nice to press. Forza seems to be slightly off with the numbering system. Their numbers are kind of one down what the actual button is. But that's not too bother because I've kind of worked it out now, so I know what I'm doing with the controls. And it just feels very nice. You can feel kind of like the ratchet movement as you turn it around, so it doesn't feel quite as smooth as an actual car because you have got kind of the artificial tension, I would guess, or artificial feedback of like the tyre. It doesn't feel quite like an actual tyre on a road because you can feel the ratchet system working. But when you're kind of driving and in the moment, I just love it. I think it's amazing to drive. I've just kind of like gone in this bush here. But it feels great and it's such an immersive experience with the triple monitors. I must say though, for me personally, I would be tempted to go for like one big monitor, but I must say I really like these monitors. They look great. The colours and everything are brilliant on them. I did say I was going to review them a bit more when I'm actually in playing a game. And they just look very good. There's no like motion blur or anything like that. There's no kind of weird, anything weird happening with them. They just look really nice. The colours and everything look really good. And yeah, Forza on these monitors with the wheel is like one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. And I wish that I could just keep playing it, but I do definitely want to try out a different game with the wheel as well, just to see if it responds a little bit differently. But I'm basically really impressed. But to sum that up, it's like if you spend a lot of money, you get a really good experience, which is unfortunately the way with most things, I suppose. I'm not sure whether this wheel's compared to other wheels because obviously I haven't really tried out many other wheels, but for me personally I think it is an awesome piece of kit. So I'm going to open up Formula 1 2019, which I've never played before. I bought it just to go with this wheel and try it out with this wheel. So I'm going to open that up and see what that's like to play and whether the wheel gives me an amazing racing experience and I feel like Lewis Hamilton about to win the World Championship or something. So I've opened up Formula 1 2019 and I have had a little bit of a practice just because I wanted to make sure I didn't completely embarrass myself. It's definitely a lot more difficult to play than Forza. It's obviously a slightly more realistic game and also an F1 car, or in this case an F2 car as I'm just starting up my career, is a little bit more difficult to drive. So I'm going to go and jump into a race that I've already practiced a few times and I can kind of tell you how the wheel feels as I'm going along. So as I'm driving, the feedback from the wheel is a lot stronger in the Formula 1 than it is to Forza. It's slightly more of a sort of aggressive experience. So basically, the wheel does feel a hell of a lot stronger in Formula 1 than it does in Forza. Formula 1 car, I guess, is probably more of a raw experience anyway, and you definitely can feel that in the feedback from the controller. Obviously, depending on what game you play, there's a lot of different settings kind of programmed in. I think it is all up to the game how the wheel works and what kind of feedback and things you get. The kind of acceleration and the braking feels pretty much the same because I'm using the same set of pedals. I haven't really noticed too much difference, but I am definitely liking the brake pedal. I like the accelerator pedal. It feels like a really nice experience, but I am struggling playing this game slightly. It's definitely a lot more difficult to play than Forza, that's for sure. I've got to keep my eye on the road and keep my wits about me, as it is very easy to kind of spin out and things, but it is a lot of fun. It is definitely a lot of fun, and it is a completely different experience because the wheel is a hell of a lot stronger. It feels like you get a lot more sort of feedback and that from this, and it's vibrating the whole time, and it's really, really pulling my arms about. I'm not paying too much attention as I'm talking, so my gameplay isn't particularly that good. But you do get a different experience, it seems, depending on what game you play. One thing I have noticed, though, is that I've not been playing for too long. I have done a few practice laps and that just so I could sort of get half of the hang of it. And my hands are slightly sore. I'm gripping the steering wheel quite tightly and kind of yanking it around and things. But maybe the kind of Alcantara coating is a little bit wearing on my hands. I don't know if there would be a softer material. It's obviously going to be softer than plastic. Maybe kind of a leather coating might be better, but then I imagine that's probably quite sticky. But it's one thing I have noticed, that my hands do definitely feel a little bit kind of raw, I guess, from having the sort of Alcantara. But I must say that it is a completely different experience. The Formula 1 game compared to Forza definitely feels a lot different, so it seems like the wheel was definitely programmed differently for different games. I kind of prefer the Forza experience because it feels like I'm not battling the wheel quite so much. My hands do definitely feel a little bit sore from playing on the Formula 1 game, as it does definitely have a little bit more feedback. But overall, I'm really impressed. I love the triple monitors. I think the colours and everything on them look really great. They've got like a nice bit of sort of motion blur that you would want that's coming from within the game itself, but they don't have any kind of stuttering, there's no tearing, the colours look lovely, the contrast looks really good, everything looks really realistic. And I do definitely like them, and when you're playing you don't really notice kind of the digital borders. The wheel I'm a big fan of. It does seem like a hell of a lot of money, but it does create a really nice gaming experience. Overall I think it looks really nice, it's really nice to use, it's very well constructed. My only kind of niggle really is that they're not very generous with the cables, but it was very easy to set up, and I am a complete noob as well, and it was very sort of easy to get the hang of, and it is just kind of plug and play. The two games that I've tried out don't require any additional setup. They know that the type of wheel that is Thrustmaster TSPC, obviously being a very common wheel to use with these type of games, are quite a high-end wheel. The games are already kind of set up for it, so they know exactly the wheel that you're using, and it's just plug and play and kind of get on with it. And I have really enjoyed myself. I'm definitely going to have to practice a little bit more. Unfortunately, I can't keep these products. But yeah, the monitors, I think, great load of features, work really well for this sort of gameplay, and the steering wheel, great load of features, it works really well, but both of them quite up there in price, so it's definitely going to be investment if you want to kind of create the same sort of racing simulator setup. If you like this video from Kit Guru, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more from Kit Guru, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and remember to press that little bell icon as well, and you'll get a notification every time a new video goes live.